Baltimore City Council Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee. We are here today for City Council Resolution 18-0105R, Legislative Oversight Hearing, Employees Retirement System and Retirement Savings Plan. Before we begin, this hearing is being televised. If you are speaking, please speak clearly into the microphone. If I politely interrupt you, I apologize in advance. I'm merely asking you to speak clearly into the microphone. If you have cell phones, please turn them to off, silent, vibrate, mute, any other setting which does not make noise. I'm Councilman Eric Costello from the 11th District, Chair of the Committee. To my left, Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark, 14th District, Vice Chair of the Committee. To her left, Council President Bernard C. Jack Young. To his left, Councilman John Bullock, 9th District, member of the committee. To my right, Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee. To his right, Councilwoman Shannon Sneed, 13th District. In addition, I'm joined by Matt Peters to my right, who is staff to the committee. Liam Davis from Council President Jack Young's Office of Legislative Affairs. And we have Karan Banks representing Mayor Pugh. We are also joined by Madam Comptroller Joan Pratt today. Before I begin, I'm going to turn it over to Council President Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I introduced this resolution in order to discuss the health of our city employees' retirement funds. I think it is important that we focus on steps that we can take moving forward to ensure that the proper oversight of these funds are taken into consideration. I envision some key goals for this evening, and that's to, number one, to ensure that the retirement funds are safe. Number two, to ensure that protective measures have been put in place in response to recent events. And three, to ensure that no employees are hired improperly in the future. Mr. Chair, thank you for giving me this opportunity to explain why this resolution has been introduced.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to start with Mr. Banks. Can you come up for a quick second? We've also been joined by Councilman Leon Pinkett from the 7th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Raymond, Solicitor Davis, Comptroller Pratt, I'm going to just turn it over to you guys in terms of who's going to take the lead and start. When you're testifying, if you could just say your name and your position. Director Raymond.
Before we do that, Mr. Chair, could we find out if these people who were asked to come are here, if you can do that?
Absolutely. So do I start with agencies that we requested agency reports from? So we started with the city solicitor. Judge Davis is here. Office of the Comptroller, Madam Comptroller is here. Inspector General, our IG, is here. Department of Finance, our Director of Finance is here. Retirement Savings Plan Board of Trustees.
I'm representing both.
Microphone.
Sorry.
Yep. No, you can sit. You don't have to get up.
Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. I'm representing both boards as I serve as chairman of the Retirement Savings Plan and chairman of the Employees Retirement System.
Okay, and then specifically, we did ask for the board chair and board members of the Employee Retirement System. I know that you're the chair. Do we have any other board members present today? Madam Comptroller?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
No.
And how many total board members do we have?
11 for Retirement Savings Plan, and I believe 9 for ERS.
Got it. And Madam Comptroller, you're a member of Retirement Savings Plan as well?
Yes, I'm a member of both boards.
And any other members from the Retirement Savings Plan Board besides you two that are present?
No.
Okay. And then Employees Retirement System Executive Director?
So, I'm sorry.
Employees Retirement System Executive Director?
The position is vacant. We have David Randall, the Deputy Director of the Fire and Police Pension System, who has been named as the acting director of the ERS system, and he is in attendance.
Mr. Ramsey? Okay, got it.
Randall.
Mr. Randall, I
Yeah,
apologize.
David Randall.
Mr. Randall. Okay, so that's Employee Retirement System Executive. He's acting ED. Okay, and then we requested the Retirement Savings Plan Executive Director.
Yeah, the administrator for the retirement savings plan is here also, Mr. Corey Roby,
How do you spell your name, sir?
Robey.
Mr. Roby, okay. And you said the administrator, I assume that's synonymous with executive director?
One level below executive director.
And there is an existing executive director?
No. Previously, the executive director of ERS served as the executive director of the
vacant.
retirement savings plan also, and I'll be addressing that in my remarks.
Okay, so Mr. Roby is the number 2, and therefore is in an acting capacity.
Yes.
Okay, and then we asked for the operations manager of the retirement savings plan?
Essentially, that's Mr. Roby.
Okay, that's the number 2?
Yes.
Okay. You should have just cloned yourself before the meeting. All right. And then the chief investment officer of the ERS?
That position is vacant.
That's vacant, okay. And then the city
That's
solicitor?
the position that need not to be filled at all. We don't need it, period.
Director Raymond, I'll turn it over to you. Mr. President, we address everyone who is invited, whether or not they're here. Okay, Liam, you're good? Got everyone? Okay, Director Raymond. Okay, did you get all that?
Good evening. I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance for the city. I also serve in the capacities of chairman of both pension systems, the Employees Retirement System and the Retirement Savings Plan. My presentation this evening will include an overview of the plans, findings related to the Inspector General, steps we've put in place to move forward, and the role of the financial advisors and plan administrators. We understand the purpose of the hearing. The findings of the Office of the Inspector General are important ones that relate to the misuse of city funds. What I want to make perfectly clear to all citizens of the city, as well as city employees that are members of the plans and retirees, is that both the employee retirement system and the retirement savings plan participants, the funds are safe, their accounts are stable and secure, and no plan participants' accounts were impacted by the Inspector General findings. Further, investment earnings were not impacted either. So I cannot stress enough that all plan participants' accounts, contributions, and investment earnings are safe, secure, stable, and have not been impacted by the recent events. Both plans have separate plan administrators and separate financial advisors. In terms of the findings, again, the Inspector General findings have no relation to plan participant accounts, contributions, or investments. The funds in question were city funds, not plan participant funds. And again, all plan participant funds are safe, secure, and stable. I'm now going to discuss some of the steps that we're putting in place as we move forward. And this will be for both plans, the retirement savings plan and employees' retirement system. Article 22A, which governs the retirement savings plan, is being reviewed to determine whether certain language needs to be clarified in certain sections of the law. So that is presently underway. 2, all expenses associated with the plans will be paid through the city's accounts payable system. In other words, all financial transactions related to the plans will go through the city's accounting system. 3, both pension plan boards will receive reporting of all activity within the plan expense accounts quarterly, including the monitoring of all operational expenses on a quarterly basis. So both boards will receive plan expense data at least quarterly and the review of all operational expenses for the respective board that they're on. This will provide more proactive oversight of all of the financial activity related to each board. Now, each board already receives quarterly updates financially as it relates to plan participants, the investment accounts, what we're investing in, how the investment managers are performing. So what we're talking here are the operational expenses and the plan expenses. Board members will review those so that the board members are fully apprised of the activities, the expenditure activities within each of the plans. When I say the plans, ERS and RSP. Separate executive directors for each pension plan will be approved. Presently,
Can I ask
Yes.
why? Because it appears to me that we're building another FTE that's probably not needed if we have an executive director that have those skills that they need to be able to do both jobs. Because in the fire and police pension board, they don't have a CIO. So I never could understand why we needed a CIO, and I was adamantly opposed to that. Okay.
Yes.
So I don't think we need to create another separate executive director when one director can do the job.
no, understood. So let me clarify that. I'm not suggesting that we would create an additional new position to be the executive director of RSP. The thought would be we would reclass the operations director position for that individual to serve as the number one for RSP. Now, as it relates to ERS, we will recruit for a new executive director. In this recruitment process, our goal is to recruit an individual that has sufficient investment experience so that there will not be a need to hire a separate chief investment officer. The final 2 slides are some information about the role of the financial advisor of the plans and the plan administrators. So on this slide, Marquette's role, Marquette is the financial advisor. This is the consulting firm that provides the plan, the pension systems, with investment advice, the reporting of investments, how our investments are doing, helping us formulate our investment strategy to safeguard against economic downturns, to preserve the principal in the fund, and to be able to take advantage when there's upswings in the market. So the contract for Marquette became effective October the 1st of 18, runs through September 30, 2023. And I've listed in the final bullet the things that Marquette is responsible for. Reviewing the investment policy statement for the pension systems, savings and deferred compensation plan, quarterly investment fund performance reporting, and assisting the board in investment fund research, strategies, and investment options. Finally, nationwide, this is the record keeping and administrative services for the deferred compensation plan and the pension systems. This contract was executed July of 18 and will run through June 30 of 2023 with 2 successive one-year renewal options, the same as Marquette. And as record keeper for the plans, Nationwide is responsible for working with the boards to establish an account for each plan participant, processing plan contributions, sending out quarterly statements, and processing distribution requests from the plan distributions. Before I open it up to questions, I would again like to reiterate what I've previously said, which is plan participant accounts are stable, safe, secure. Their contributions, investment earnings have not been impacted by the recent events related to the Inspector General's report. With that said, I'll entertain any questions.
Mr. President?
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, I'm curious, how were committee members involved in the due diligence and interviewing of the former CIO without knowledge or disclosure of his current employment and ownership of LVI Power?
What I can say is that the board followed city personnel policy in the selection of the former CIO. The pension system has a personnel committee.
Did they do, like the police department do they do background checks to find out, what other interests that they might have? Because if that was done, we'd have found out that this guy wasn't the right guy.
Well, what I will say to that is how that was done is subject to an Inspector General report, and because that is a personnel matter, I cannot publicly discuss it. But the issues related to that are in the Inspector General report.
Okay. Let me ask you, how many, should I ask that one? Yeah. Okay. How many investment professionals were on staff in 2015 and 2016, and what were their roles?
Okay, I missed the...
Investment professionals. How many investment professionals were on staff in 2015 and 2016, and what were their roles?
Okay, there was no investment officer position, if you're referring to the chief investment officer.
I'm talking about investment professionals, period.
Oh.
Because normally when you have pension boards,
Yeah.
you have somebody with some type of expertise in investment.
Yes, I believe there were 2 positions. I can verify that, and presently they're vacant. So towards that end, we're looking at all of the vacancies within the ERS to properly fill the positions so that the agency is fully staffed.
So those positions been vacant since 2015?
I'll have to verify that.
Okay. I'd like to have you report that back to this committee. Okay. when we talked about, when you talked about the misuse of city funds, that was misuse, that wasn't theft, am I correct?
That is correct. It is not theft. It was misuse in that the funds were not spent in accordance with city policy, city procurement guidelines.
Okay. I just have some really serious problems in how, you know, the process was done to vet the CIO. And did anybody on the board know that the chairman and the CIO were business partners?
The answer to that is no.
Why wasn't that looked into? I mean, people know about relationships, so no one knew. I mean, who hired him? Did the board chair hire him? How was he hired? And who recommended him? Was the position posted?
Okay, those are personnel matters that we cannot publicly discuss, but these issues are fully detailed in the Inspector General's report.
So in the Inspector General report, when she come up, she's going to tell us how he was hired. Was it posted, or who selected this guy? I mean, I'm not saying nobody's name. I'm asking about procedural steps, and I think you can answer that.
Okay, and I respectfully disagree. These are personnel matters that could potentially be subject to lawsuit.
Well, I'm hoping there is going to be a lawsuit. I hope we're going to sue.
I hope that there is not a lawsuit.
I hope it is going to be a lawsuit that the city is going to sue the CIO to get our money back for not only not being at work, but for his travel. So I'm hoping that is the case.
Right.
And I'm hoping that the city is going after the CIO to get our money back because he did no work. I'm gonna leave it up to some other council people, and I'll come back.
I have a question.
Because what I want to know is who recommended this guy, and was it posted? That's a question that anybody should be able to answer. That has nothing to do with personnel, asking who the person was. I didn't quote nobody's name or anything. I'm asking, how was the position posted? Who recommended him? And there are simple questions that I think need to be answered. I don't think nobody needs to skirt around that question. I think it needs to be answered.
Okay.
Is somebody going to answer that question?
No, I'm standing by my position that it's a personnel matter, and to get into this could potentially cause the city
To ask, I disagree, and we can respectfully disagree, okay? I'm asking, was this position posted, yes or no? That has nothing to do with no lawsuit. Mr. City Solicitor, somebody need to weigh in on this. I'm not asking, all I'm asking for, have the position been posted? And that's all I want to know. Because all jobs through the city of Baltimore, I don't care who it is, supposed to be posted. Unless somebody has something to hide.
Judge Davis, just say your name and position, please.
Yes,
for everyone
Andre
watching.
Davis, City Solicitor, Department of Law. I would simply reiterate the director's caution, Mr. President, most respectfully, to the importance of hewing closely to the line of avoiding commentary on personnel matters. We have long interpreted the law to prohibit not just naming an individual in connection with personnel matters, but to discuss information that could easily lead to the identification of an individual is likewise prohibited under Maryland law and city policy.
Mr. City Solicitor, I'm asking, was the position posted? That's all I asked. And I also asked, who recommended the person? That has nothing to do with what you guys are just telling me. Nothing at all. It's apple and oranges. I'm asking, was the position posted, and who recommended them? I mean, that's a simple question. It has nothing to do with no lawsuit or any of that.
The way it does, Mr. President, and I understand your frustration, I really do, but these could be disputed facts in litigation. It is sometimes surprising how disputed facts arise in litigation over what seems to be really very simple and straightforward matters. So in keeping with our duty to protect the interests of the city overall, we would respectfully ask that that question not be persisted.
I respectfully disagree, but that's typical of what we get here as council members. Anyway, it's really typical. We ask one simple question: was the job posted? What does that have to do with any lawsuits? Nothing at all. I just want to know, was the job posted?
I think it should be a matter of public record.
It's a matter of public record, but we have to get it from them.
No, you should be able to get it from human resources.
Well, we'll contact Human Resources
Yeah,
to find out, was this position posted? I mean, it's a simple question. I mean, it makes me feel like you're hiding something. I don't know how my council colleagues feel, but it makes me feel like you're hiding something. I asked, was it posted? Who recommended the person? That has nothing to do with a lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not stupid either. I'm far from being stupid.
Mr.
And
President.
I have to address that. As finance director, I am not hiding anything, and
Tell me, was the position posted? Tell me, was the position posted, and tell me who recommended him.
Okay, so again, it's a personnel matter. I can't publicly discuss it. At the same time, I'm protecting my professional reputation.
And nobody attacked you, and nobody attacked your reputation. I believe mine is being attacked because I asked a simple question that no one wants to answer. A simple question. Was the job posted, yes or no? But stand by your opinion, because I'm not going to let this go. It's not going to go away.
Mr. President, if I may, can we ask when this individual started working for the board?
No, that's personnel. You can't ask. It's personnel.
Maybe I can clarify a little bit just to release the tension. The personnel stuff under state law is about individual people. And so, for example, this person could tell you when they started and stopped working. We as the government are not allowed to. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's how they've construed this. For example, people who apply for jobs, we can't give out their resume, even if they post their resume online. And the reason we take it seriously isn't just a lawsuit, it's a crime in Maryland to give out people's personnel information in addition to their financial and records. We can certainly give you the kind of information you want to have in a private conversation, but we can't do it publicly here, and that's really the truth of it. We're happy to talk to you as your lawyers at any point for anything you might need, but I'll jump in front of my boss and everyone in here before I let them commit a crime. So I hopefully that will satisfy you. If you have questions you want answered that we can't say publicly, we can always talk to you. It's a ridiculous rule, and you're right, Councilwoman Clark. You can go online and figure out the facts of whether or not the job was posted. Frankly, I don't know. I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't know. I'm sure you can find that online. I don't know when the guy started. Maybe somebody else does, but I mean, the simple truth is it's probably online in terms of that. It might not be. He certainly could tell you, but we can't here tell you, and we are absolutely not telling you because we can't.
So could we do two things?
Yeah.
One, could you provide the reference to state law that explains what?
Sure. It's state government article.
I didn't mean to.
Absolutely. I got it off the top of my head if you want it.
You're smarter than I am.
I
got
do
another
it all day
question.
long. It's ridiculous,
Here's
but
the-
it's state law.
Here's
Yeah.
the other piece of that question, if I may, Mr. President. Can we have can the president?
I don't want no conversation. I don't want no backdoor conversation. I don't want that. Okay. I have another question. As a part of the contract for the CIO, that person was to establish residency in Baltimore. Why didn't the board reach out and confirm that? Because he wasn't living in Baltimore. He'd never established, as far as I know, his residency in Baltimore. Now, what was the vetting process of that? Who had the oversight to make sure that he actually lived in Baltimore City?
Again, it's a personnel matter, and we cannot publicly discuss it.
Are we going to hire the investment professionals and get them on board as soon as possible? That's personnel too? You said we had 2 vacancies for investment, for an investment person, for someone to have the experience in investing our money. You said it was 2 vacancies.
That's correct.
Well,
I believe it's 2.
when are those? I mean, is this a personnel matter? You can't tell me. When would those positions be posted, and when will we have somebody hired? And
Yeah, I'll follow up with you, but our goal is to recruit those as soon as possible. These are positions where individuals have to get on an eligibility list, which means they have to apply. Applications have to be reviewed by the Department of Human Resources. They have to be approved to be on the list.
Director, can you?
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. The CIO should have been on that list as well in order to be hired.
Can you?
What I can state is for
Director,
CIO,
I'm just
there
telling
was
you
no-
how it is.
There was no, because it's a MAPS position, there's not an eligibility list.
Regardless, everybody need to go to get on the list, as far as I'm concerned, for those kind of jobs to pay those kind of salaries. And that process was not followed. And,
Well,
and why was there a need for a CIO? There was no need for a CIO for the police and fire pension. So why did we go out to hire a CIO for that fund? You know, I don't have no more questions because I'm getting a little, you know.
Director, can the committee get in writing the process that you were just describing for the
Yes.
2 new hires, just step by step, incremental, please? If you could get that to us by the end of the week, that would be greatly appreciated. It doesn't need to be elaborate, couple bullet points. Councilwoman Clark?
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, I have a question, but before I get to my question, what did you mean just now when you said that because they are maps? Now, we're talking about people that don't exist yet, so we're not
That's correct.
messing with somebody's life, okay? There's 2 people out there, or maybe 10, who are all going to want these positions. And you said something about, well, they didn't have to be, correct me if I'm understanding wrong. Since those are MAPS positions, which are I forget what it stands for, but it means the bosses.
Managerial and
Managerial,
administrative
right.
Professional society.
Right. Because those 2 positions will be considered MAPS, they don't have to go on an eligibility list?
No,
They don't,
So,
or
no.
I'm wrong?
no, let me clarify.
Yeah.
The 2 positions, the staff positions that we're talking about that are investments positions.
Right.
Those require being on an eligibility list.
Oh, okay.
The position that does not require being on an eligibility list is the chief investment officer position.
Really?
Yes, just like, for example, as finance director, there's no eligibility list for finance director. At certain grade levels, there are not lists.
Yeah, you're the president.
You're not on the list because you are a mayoral appointee.
Right.
The CIO is not a mayoral appointee. Am I correct?
No, and I agree.
Okay, all right.
The point being, for certain MAPS level positions, there are no eligibility lists. You post an advertisement, you receive resumes, you evaluate the resumes, you conduct interviews, you make a selection.
Well,
And I'll put all of this in writing with the citation as why that's allowable.
okay, so basically, a point of contention here seems to be that there's an argument about whether or not a CIO chief investment officer is really needed by the ERS and the ER savings and loan, or whatever that is, okay,
ERS.
savings. So that's an issue right here.
Right.
That
And I'd be
has
happy
not
to
been
address
resolved.
it. I'd be happy to address it. What I indicated earlier is that for the recruitment of the executive director position for the ERS, we want to recruit an individual with sufficient investment, previous
so that you are
investment
not-
experience, so that we do not have, so that we do not have to recruit for the CIO position.
So that the answer would be that there
Would-
wouldn't be one of those people, one of the CIOs with ERS, if you are able to recruit and hire a new ERS director who has investment experience sufficient to cover both roles.
Correct.
Which
So-
it makes sense
Yes.
anyway.
So let me be perfectly clear. Our goal is to hire an executive director for ERS who has sufficient investment experience where we do not have to hire a CIO. That's the goal.
Okay.
My question goes back to my earlier question. The Fire and Police Pension Board don't have a CIO. So why do we have a CIO, and why was a CIO needed? You know, we don't need a CIO. We didn't have a CIO, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Well, we don't have one now, so we're halfway there. My question, can we do a little 101? I'm sorry.
my answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was the question?
My question was, why the Fire and Police doesn't have a CIO and the ERS have a CIO? Why? Explain that.
Do you?
No, I think that question, again, is related to personnel, and we do not want to say something in public that will jeopardize us.
You're
Mr. Chair,
winning.
maybe there's a little bit of a point of confusion. There is no current CIO.
Right.
The position
And
is
it
vacant.
shouldn't be ever again.
And they're saying they're not going to hire one.
And so basically.
They're agreeing with you.
You're winning. Well, no, I mean, no, but it's important to consider it that way because we just came to a resolution.
What I want to say is, when they hire these people, it's taken from our retirement funds.
Well, that's the question I really was getting to about where the money. So really, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but bear with me. I have one technical question, and then my bigger question is, the ERS and the ER Savings and Loan,
RSP,
RSP,
Retirement Savings Plan.
the Retirement Savings Plan. Let's go to the ERS. What, in the report that came out from the Investigator General, there was reference to forfeiture funds, or I read it in this
That's correct,
resolution.
forfeiture funds.
But I don't know, so in the big picture, I would like to know where do our contributions go to the ERS and the EOS? Where does the rest of the money come from that funds it? What is the money that's available, like every agency has, that they use to turn the lights on, to hire people to do the work? Where's the working funds coming from? So, but first, what are forfeiture funds?
Forfeiture funds are related to the retirement savings plan.
Okay.
The retirement savings plan was set up such that the city would provide a match requirement to the plan participants. So anyone hired after July 1 of 2014 goes in, for the most part, goes into, if you're a civilian, goes into the retirement savings plan.
Really? without knowing it?
Unless you're fire or police.
Yeah, because,
If you're civilian, you go into RSP. So if you get hired by DOT, the finance department, city council, as a, like the
my
clerks.
contributions go.
Not the elected officials, the
Okay,
people that work
ERS.
for you. Right.
ERS.
So we provide a match. So RSP is like a 401K.
Oh, it's
and,
nice.
and the employer provides a match. If the individual is terminated from city employment before they would vest, before
Okay.
they're eligible to vest,
Terminate before vesting.
the city retrieves those funds and it goes into an account called the forfeiture fund.
Okay. And then, that's what got moved around, wasn't it?
That fund is the subject of the Inspector General
Right.
findings.
So that's a fund we haven't talked about, but it's out there somewhere called a forfeiture fund.
Yes,
And that's where the money came from to buy the furniture or whatever it was.
correct.
Okay. So where would that money go if it weren't going to buy furniture? I mean, what do you do with that
It
money?
could
What
be
happens
used-
with that
It could be
money?
used for other reasonable administrative expenses, or it could be used for subsequent contributions, the match contributions.
The match back into the savings.
Well, every time an employee gets hired and becomes a member of the RSP, the city provides a match.
Right.
So the funds that are in the forfeiture fund from people who were terminated
Right.
because they didn't vest, we could use that money to provide the match requirement.
Like for a new employee.
Yeah, for their account.
So you match it and you can, well, I don't want to get off
Yeah,
into
there's
the
different
savings plan.
percentages.
So those are monies that were used in this case, according to the reports, to buy whatever was
Yes.
inappropriate or whatever.
And the law says that that forfeiture funds can be used for reasonable administrative expenses.
Which, of course, this wasn't.
Well,
Apparently.
and that's why we're reviewing Article 22 for clarification, to make it crystal clear what is allowable and what is not allowable.
How much money is sitting right now in the forfeiture fund?
Several $100,000. We're not talking millions of
I-
dollars.
Several hundred thousands.
And
a
I
lot
can
to me.
provide a specific amount, but
Okay.
the
All right,
point
so-
is, we're not talking millions of dollars.
And so, when we talk about this report, et cetera, we're talking about an inappropriate use of this forfeiture fund. What is it that, how are all the people on our pension system at risk that if somebody really wildly bad got loose somewhere, we could lose our retirement benefits, we could have them minimized, we could go bad. Now, it seems to me if we hire the wrong investors, that's a real fast way to go bad, which is why I know my colleague is concerned about that, because that's where it all usually goes bad. And what he's focusing on is really at the key and the core of it all. But I'm just trying to go around the edges so that we understand the next time something happens, that our savings, our investments are sheltered from the day-to-day operational funding of the ERS. What administrative costs can you take off and do you take off?
Understood. So let me try to explain that. And it works the same for both ERS and RSP. The operational expenses are derived from two sources: investment earnings and the city's contribution to those funds. For ERS, the city provides a contribution on an annual basis. And that's because the ERS is a defined benefit pension plan. Just like EOS, you work X amount of years, you're guaranteed a certain benefit, pension benefit,
Right.
based on the years you work. That's how it works for ERS.
That's what it's all about right now, we're talking about.
Right. With retirement savings plan, because that's built more like a 401K,
And people opt for that instead of the regular.
they have no choice because
Oh,
the
yeah,
law
that's right.
from
They
July
have to
1
do
of
it now, right?
2014.
Okay,
Right.
so from
Right.
14 on,
Right.
oh, wow, so
That's
you've
a
got
new-
no option.
It's a new, right, it's a new plan.
Got
And we had to do that because of the financial position of the city. It was no longer financially sustainable for the city to continue having a defined benefit plan.
But we didn't take anything away from anyone like we did the fire and police. We didn't take away a benefit, we just
We-
set a
we
time at which
created a
you
new
that you.
plan.
If
Yeah.
I may, I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
Microphone, Judge. Thank
This
you.
is City
okay.
Solicitor Andre Davis.
Oh, we won't talk about the
Yeah,
lawsuit.
but we did not take away
Oh, it-
anything from the fire and police.
Okay, with all due respect, I'll leave this alone so we don't get sued.
Yeah, No, we are in litigation, madam.
I'm
That's-
sorry.
That's
I
why
did- I shouldn't have mentioned it.
The
It
trial
was-
is next week.
Okay.
The trial begins next week.
I understand. I'm sorry, that was the example I always use.
Okay.
Oh, but I shouldn't
Right.
have said that.
Okay, so in a nutshell, the operating expenses from both plans are generated from the investment earnings and the city contributions. That's how the plans operate.
Okay. So we
ag-
could, I mean,
Well, in order for some type of a massive fraud or some type of
bad investment,
something, right,
huge.
the boards would be responsible for that because the boards receive the quarterly investment reports. We have the third-party plan administrator who is nationwide, who's responsible for maintaining each individual plan participant account, keeping it updated, and sending out the quarterly notices to each of those individuals regarding their account. We had discussed that in the presentation.
Okay, and I guess so basically, it's the way we invest, and it's the way the city funds the accounts.
Yes.
Funds, is there a backup, is there a savings plan for the savings plan? Is there
No.
another
There has to
place?
be extreme due diligence in the management, the investment, and the oversight of the pension
Mm-hmm.
funds because it affects all of us,
Correct.
everybody in this room.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Sneed? Or, no, I'm sorry, Stokes. I'm sorry.
Mr. Raymond, I just have a question. I know President Young had asked you, and Councilman Costello said you would get the information. My question, if you can answer it, is not what is the personnel policy, what is the policy for hiring the CIO? Because I guess when personnel comes in, it's a little tricky. So my question, can you explain what is the policy for hiring the CIO? CIO, not the personnel policy. Can you explain that?
The policy for hiring the chief investment officer is what I previously indicated, which is you would prepare a job description, an advertisement would be advertised, you would receive resumes, those resumes would be reviewed and evaluated, the candidates would be interviewed, and a selection would be made.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director, which position? Was the CIO position itself advertised previously?
I don't know that we know. I assume so. But I think going forward, there's no plans to hire a new one, so there's no advertising out there.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Can you
I mean, backwards, it would,
follow up with the
we
committee?
would follow up with you. I mean, I don't know that we brought any of that info, but
Follow up with,
Sure.
if you could please follow up with the committee on whether the previous iteration of the CIO position was advertised online and in what form it was advertised.
Yep, understood.
In the newspaper, any form of media advertisement. Councilwoman Sneed?
I have two questions, but I just want to first follow up on the councilman's question in reference to when you are having these meetings, is everyone required to come? So is everyone at this table, and how often are you guys coming to the table to discuss? Like, how often are the board meetings happening?
Meetings are held quarterly. Special meetings can be announced. So it could be every month, every 2 months, minimum quarterly. There are provisions that if individuals do not attend a certain number of meetings, that they can be voted off of the board, and that has not been an issue to date, to my knowledge.
And so everyone has been attending, chairman, vice chair, everyone, staff, everyone has been a part of these.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to say that there has been 100% attendance, but I would say that attendance has not been a negative issue for the board. Either board, RSP or ERS.
Okay. And attendance and everything, that's recorded in a note so we can easily go and go through those notes? and
Yes.
see? Okay.
Absolutely.
If I can, I just wanted, Chairman, I hope I can change gears for a second. I want to talk about the mandatory employee contributions. Can I talk about that? And so can you tell me a little bit in reference, and I don't know who's the right person to answer this question, so it may be someone else, but in reference to contributions coming out to employees' pay, are we having a problem with it not being deducted? Can we state how many city employees' contributions are not being deducted at this time?
I think with that question, we need to do research and follow up in writing with you.
Okay, so that's fine. So once we get how many employees that's affecting, we'll get that in writing. The second question is then.
Councilwoman, can you just rephrase the question? I want to make sure Matt
Sure.
captures that.
Sure. So I want to know how many city employees out of the mandatory employee contributions, how many people are not having their contributions taken out?
So,
Mandatory contributions, how many city employees are not having the contributions taken out?
contributions are mandatory contributions.
Mandatory contributions.
Yep, so we will follow up in writing regarding that.
And then once we figure out how many, has it happened in the past as well?
Okay.
Has
and-
that happened in the past? And what have we done to correct the situation? So once it's alerted that an employee, a city employee, that this mistake is alerted, is the money paid into it? Is a city employee expected to pay that money back? I'm just curious in terms of that.
Understood. We'll provide a written response.
How long do you think it will take to figure out?
Say a week. By not this Friday, the following Friday. Yeah. Yes, to the committee.
Mr. President?
Okay, this is my final question. Does the board have an investment committee?
Yes, the board, yes.
Okay, then how has this board and investment committee providing proper standard of care to the pensions when it has not had investment professionals consistently on staff? Because you said we had two that
Yeah,
we're down to.
Yeah, I believe that there's 2 staff-level investment officers that have been vacant. We have to remember that both boards get investment advice from our financial advisor, and this is quarterly. So that's Marquette. So The financial advisor is there to provide guidance and advice on all investment strategies. They provide updates on which elements of the portfolio are performing well, which elements of the portfolio are not performing well. If it gets to a point where there's a pattern of poor performance by a particular investment manager, the recommendation will be to put them on the watch list. If there's no improvement, remove them as a manager. We reallocate the portfolio depending on the investment strategies, depending on like how the market is doing. So there's no issue with investment guidance or performance because we have professional investment financial advisor on board at all times.
Okay, the steps that you outlined in your presentation that you have put in place, would you report back to this committee in like 3 months how well those are going, and are they actually working and making a difference? Because I don't ever want to see this ever happen again as long as my money is over there in that system.
So is
Chair.
mine.
Yeah, I know, but I'm concerned about mine. Okay,
I'm concerned for all
I'm concerned
of
for all,
ours.
everybody's, but
Yeah.
I'm mainly concerned about mine. Like I said, Mr. Chair, if there's no more further questions, I would just like you to recess this because I'm not finished.
Can I ask one question so we can, when we come back? Can you do us a favor, or can you do me a favor and send the answer to the committee? Does the ERS pension board or the savings plan have any investments that by policy or law it does not make? In other words, are there certain kinds of investments that, now you remember South Africa,
Yes.
and we embargoed
Yeah, we
all investment.
divested.
Yeah, that's the last time I remember a council action about a pension investment. But
That's correct. And I believe that was Somalia.
Well, it might have been
I'm sorry,
Somalia, but
Sudan.
I know it was South
Sudan.
Africa.
Sudan.
Oh, okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
also, yeah, we did South Africa. Councilwoman Reeves, if you remember, in those days, it was a law.
Right. So we'll provide a list of those.
Would you?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, they repealed it?
Okay, we got a couple,
Oh, well, that's a good reason to repeal it.
we have a couple get-backs from the administration. If some stuff by this Friday, other stuff by next Friday.
Yes.
If you could get that back to us, we'll go into recess and we will reconvene in the very near future. Once we have that information, hopefully we can have a more in-depth dialogue on this.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
If you have any
you.
belongings underneath your seat, please grab them. We're now in recess.
We will.